Hi, welcome to Straight Up. All right, it's the eve of the 52nd Republic status. That's the anniversary of Guyana becoming a republic. So it's the Republic of the the Republic of Guyana, in 1970, February 23rd. We'll be right back with our guest this evening, former Prime Minister and former Mayor of Georgetown, Hamilton Green.
She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockcrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockcrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockcrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now a come home. The naga jackass yard for fetch the load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Lokonani. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Bangameri. Listen to this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. Them children glad when the weekend come. Out in the yard, them all gather round. Some a play catcher, some making house from straw. Two who come later, a grandma or grandpa. All a sit down just a wait. Moonlight so bright, it's just the right time to listen story or to say a little nursery rhyme. Grandpa voice a echo in the night as he tell some picnic a there with fright. Oh Ligan, Mungeza, Massa Kurma Nancy even Watamuma. Oh Ligan, Moongazer, Massa Kurma Nancy even Watamuma. Yeah, man, that's the true story that tell the people about life in the country, life in the country.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, let's get ready to rock and roll. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. Yep, 8 minutes after 9 o'clock in beautiful, beautiful Guyana. The time is different in, where is it? Maybe in the eastern part of the US, or maybe if you're in Ukraine or wherever you are. Good evening to all of you guys. Rita, good evening. Vincent and Lynette Nelson, all of you guys. I can't call all of your names, but Wayne Coppin, all the way. Wayne Coppin is watching us from Linden. Oh, yeah, that beautiful mining town of Linden. Good evening to all of you guys. And as you know, tomorrow is Mashramani. Tomorrow is Mashramani. And tonight I have a gentleman who is here with us. He was Prime Minister of Guyana. He is the longest serving mayor. He denied me a piece of that seat. There you go. We got his attention. Executive member of the People's National Congress. He was the youngest general secretary of the People's National Congress. You name it. It's always a pleasure to have him with us. Hamilton Green.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Green, he's known as, they know him as Uncle Hammy. They call him Hammy. Whatever you call him, he will respond to you because he is what you call a real grassroots politician. Hammy, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, brother, and God bless.
Really, really a pleasure to have you on here this evening, sir. And I know you don't mind people calling you Hammy and Mr. Green. You're not the type that. How do you feel when people address you as Honorable Hamilton Green? Which one do you prefer?
I prefer Uncle Hammy. Hammy. The Honorable is left for very, very state occasions. I like to talk with people at their level. In fact, last week I was in the yard with my wife, and a chap passed, I don't know who he is, and looked at me and said, "This last standing giant." So that's another name I have.
Last standing giant. Giant, indeed. A lot of people, I see Asim Shakur is saying, salute, sir. Salute, sir. Salute to the last standing giant. How have you been, Mr. Hamilton Green? Don't tell me we start with the internet connection, internet problem already. Typical, right? In Guyana, they boast and brag about billions of dollars in terms of oil. Billions of dollars in oil revenue. Billions upon billions of dollars. And look what's happening. The former prime minister, former mayor of Georgetown, former general secretary of the PNC. In fact, the youngest, he was about maybe 27, 28, when he was made the general secretary of the People's National Congress, when the People's National Congress was the People's National Congress. I hope you guys didn't hear that. That was a whisper there. Let's get back to Mr. Green. Mr. Green, welcome back.
Thank you.
How have you been?
Fine and dandy.
Fine and dandy. It's good to see you. Let's begin. Let's start off. I know tomorrow's the 52nd anniversary. I want to ask you some questions about that because you will take us back, way back in time. But before you do, sir, you were once the mayor. I believe you were also the minister of local government at one time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. Yeah. And how do you feel when you fast forward now and you hear the person who sits there as the minister of local government is making these sort of remarks in Parliament?
The reason why this figure was higher in you gotta get dildo. That's what you're looking for. There were snacks that
Yeah, go right ahead. I missed you there for a second, but what's your take on the current person who sits in that position is talking about who got to get a dildo and all these vulgarity.
Well, in the old days, he was assured and sent home packing. But it appears to me that the present government seemed quite comfortable and quite capable of tolerating and having such low-class people in the cabinet. I don't know how a man behaves that way in Parliament and still can carry the title of honorable. It's really ridiculous, it's absurd, it's unacceptable, and I don't know why we have a president and the prime minister who did not deal with him condignly. That couldn't happen with Burnham, couldn't happen with Hoyt or any of us. They would have been sent home or reassigned post haste. But perhaps we've reached a lower level, and that is so sad as we celebrate the 52nd anniversary of the Republic of Guyana.
Thank you so much. In terms of the low level, the lower class of individuals, not all of them, mind you, but this particular individual falls in that category of the lower level in terms of morals and all manner of other things. But you have spent some time in Parliament yourself as a young man. What was the most memorable thing that comes to mind? And I'm sure that there wasn't any vulgarity back in your time, sir.
No, we didn't. We had robust cut and thrust, exchange of ideas, anecdotes, but not descending to that level of banality, vulgarity, and unacceptable behavior. We never reached that point. Eventually threw the books to the ground. That was temperamental. We understood that. Oscar Clark, who was Speaker at the time, insisted that he apologized, and he did subsequently. But we've never had this kind of low dissent in our Parliament. And our Parliament is the place where young people look to for guidance. What lesson, what message are we sending to the new and young generation? Is it that they should grow up in this kind of environment where the parliamentarians are so vulgar? And I repeat, not removed post haste. I couldn't imagine a parliamentarian doing that when Burnham was president and still remained in Parliament. But I can only assume that that is the quality that they accept. Men of very, very low moral fiber. And
you said,
so on.
sorry,
The Republic of Guyana.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but you did say that when that if it was Forbes Burnham, President Burnham would never have tolerated this sort of vulgarity in Parliament. But if it was Forbes Burnham, he would never have allowed such an individual to sit there in Parliament in the first place. Let's go to a release, and we're hearing that there's a motion referred to. I don't know why they keep referring this vagabond as honorable. There's nothing about him that is honorable, but he has been sent to the Committee of Privileges. What do you know? You've spent some time in Parliament. Is that a waste of time?
It ought not to be, but in the present circumstances, it very well may be, because they have a majority on all of these committees, and the sycophants don't deal with principles, don't deal with what is right or wrong. They deal with protecting the kith and kin, no matter how vulgar, how inappropriate is the behavior. But I hope, for the sake of this country, that committee will act with discretion and show some level of decency and deal with him condignly.
All right, let us keep our fingers crossed for that. Honorable Prime Minister, former Mayor of Georgetown, former General Secretary of the PNC, Hamilton Green is with us this evening. Your fellow guy from Albaistown, Charlestown area, Mansour Nadir, who is now a staunch PPP supporter. He sits there as Speaker of the National Assembly. Are you surprised, or were you surprised when he suspended the Member of Parliament, Sharon Duncan, for 4 sittings as a result of Sharon standing up to defend his colleagues over that dildo remark?
I'm not at all surprised. Mansour is part of that cabal that have lost all sense of decency and direction. I'm not at all surprised. He is just a hired gun for the PPP and lacked the sophistication of what a speaker ought to be, and to distance himself and at least try some balance in his decisions. But as I said earlier, we are dealing with the lowest class of citizens. As one British MP once said, we now face the scum and dregs of humanity. And I believe that appellation, that description, fits that gentleman and his behavior in Parliament, the scum and dregs of our society.
You know, Mr. Green, some of these folks are very touchy. They're very sensitive. They're very soft. And, you know, they rush and they love to sue people for infliction of emotional distress and so forth and so on. So, but your descriptions of these individuals were spot on. I agree with you 100%. They're the lowest of the lowest. Let us move away though. But the suspension of the suspension of Sharon Duncan for 4 sittings. I'm not hearing much coming from the opposition side. Is there anything they can do to reverse that decision, Mr. Green?
I don't think so. The whole thing revolves based on this understanding of Eurocentric democracy on numbers, and comes down to the numbers in Parliament by voting. There can be no other means, particularly when you have a speaker who is clearly myopic, who is clearly biased, and has no understanding of his role.
Absolutely.
That's the dilemma that the people of this country face. And at another time and place, we will discuss how we get out of this doldrums of society and move ourselves onto other heights and into the light of goodness, peace, and prosperity.
Absolutely. Well said, well spoken. Mr. Hamilton Green is with me this evening before we get into the Republic anniversary, the 52nd anniversary. And if I say that we became a republic, we got our Republican status way before I was even born. I'll be giving my age out. But before we get to that, Mr. Green, I know you heard of this businessman, this Chinese businessman in Guyana by the name of Su. I want to ask you about Su, but before I do, I want you to hear when Jack Deere was confronted about Su, how he reacted, and then we'll get into a little bit of Su before we move on.
Okay, well, maybe the Chinese company that did not get the agreement that they wanted here, maybe they're the ones who told you, or it could be just a fictitious thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Su Jerome?
Su? Oh, Su. My relationship? Nothing. He's a tenant in my place, yeah.
And he's a good friend of yours?
Yes, yes, he is a friend.
All right, let's get into the Su situation. The Chinese businessman, Su, is alleging that he pays bribe, and that's what he said, according to Vice News, that he has to pay a bribe to Barrett Jack Deere and others. Barrett has since denied that. Su has since, we haven't heard, but we were told that Su has also denied that he ever said that. But what is your take on such serious allegations leveled against Bara Jagdi?
It's very serious, and I prefer not to comment, except the people of Guyana are intelligent, and whether you're a PPP, PNC, or AFC, or a WP, you will judge from the empirical evidence that is placed before you. May I say something about Sue and these allegations? Like every other part of the world, you've got good Guyanese, you've got bad Guyanese. You've got good Chinese, you've got bad Chinese. You've got credible Chinese investors and those that are out to rape the society. And provided they can get onto their heels people who have no moral standing, they will so perform like any other place. So I don't be part of this China bashing because I have the highest regard for the People's Republic of China. In fact, I was one of 4 persons who ensured that the Ghana recognized them in 1972, a few months before Carrie Festival. Ptolemy Reed, Forbes Burnham, Hubert Jack, and myself. We stood tall in cabinet when we argued against those who were afraid to ensure that we brought the People's Republic of China into the Caribbean community by being the first country in this part of the world to give them diplomatic recognition and status. And that respect holds good for the people of China. But every family, you've got the bad eggs and the rotten eggs. It appears from the evidence available that this gentleman happens to be one of those who believe they can go around the world and persuade, and I use the word in its nicest meaning, persuade high officials to do what they will like done so that they can inherit the filthy lucre of money and make billions out of resources of the people of this country.
All right. Just again to have our listeners know, they know by now that Sue, the person who is supposed to be Sue, has allegedly denied. We don't know because we haven't seen him publicly deny it, but we got a letter that was made public that he has since denied. In 1972, what was it like? What was the relationship like? Because you're saying that it was the first country to have got into a diplomatic arrangement with China. What was that like in 1972?
It took the strength, the audacity of Forbes Burnham to bring China in, because remember, the other CARICOM states were afraid, reluctant, because of the extent and the intensity of the Cold War. It was a time when Guyana was preparing for its Carrie Festa, again, the first in the region. And all of our other partners said, don't touch China for fear of angering the Western European powers. But as I said, it took the wisdom, the audacity, and the courage of Burnham and a few of us within the cabinet to say, yes, we'll go forward to recognize China. And it has been a useful and a beneficial relationship all along.
All right, useful and beneficial all along. I agree with the Honorable Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Hamilton Green, also former mayor, that this is not a Chinese bashing. And I agree with you 100%. So I just want to make that clear, that it's not a Chinese bashing. But what is your take on all of these questionable contracts being handed out to some Chinese businessmen and companies? Do you see anything fishy about that?
It is not fishy, sharky. We have sharks there eating up the sardines. But on a serious note, all we expect of this government is what they claim they would do. A, recognize the utility of one Guyana, recognize that half could not be the whole, and second, that they ought to indulge in full disclosure if they are to subscribe, as they boast, to democracy. Democracy is not a once in 5 years exercise of elections. That is minor. Democracy is how you treat your citizens day in and day out. You have this recent abomination of using the Enmore sugar packing system to bring in some new set of investors. We're not too sure who they are and how the company is registered. And after boasting of using Enmore to help resuscitate the industry, we're going to take it to some part of Bobis. And of course, they're going to use the same oil money to open inverted commas, compensate some of the workers. And yet, in spite of letters and requests, we have heard nothing substantial to explain this use, or perhaps misuse, of state funds and property. So that's another sample of where we are today. And I don't know if a letter I sent will be published tomorrow. We must pray for change if we are to save this country and give our young people a country that they can be proud of.
Well said. 30 minutes after 9 o'clock. You're listening to Straight Up on 107.1 FM. Mr. Hamilton Green is with us this evening. I was looking at part of the PPP's 52nd anniversary message, and it says here that 52 years ago, the attainment of Republican status heralded self-rule. As we reflect, let's renew our commitment to collectively work towards building a Guyana we all desire and to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. A lot of folks watching this show and listening might say the PPP is being hypocritical. They're not strengthening any bond of brotherhood and sisterhoods. They're dividing the nation. What would be your response to that, sir?
Not only that, I suspect I would have lent the person who prepared that statement a dictionary or an encyclopedia, because obviously they don't understand the meaning of the word collective. Or it is that they are now interpreting things to mean that half is equal to the whole. You know, the old folks said, one mouth no load, meaning that you can say anything. What matters is what and how you set about doing things. This oil contract is a tragedy. You know, I expressed my views when the coalition partner signed a contract between 2015-20. I expressed my concerns that here it is, you have a minister going into a room to sign a contract with those giants without proper advice. The PPP, through its spokespersons, expressed dismay and promised to have it reviewed and looked at. They have not done so. And this big conference at the Marriott, which was another sample of South Africa, where when I approached White's Lane to visit a friend, I was told by the policemen, who were quite courteous, that I needed a pass. I looked in the mirror of the car and said, is this Hamilton Green who served this country for so long? Or am I in South Africa? I couldn't believe my ears. To enter White's Lane, I was told I had to get a pass. So this big conference, I was optimistic. I didn't join the protest on the first day, because I expected when I heard from the luminaries of the government side that they will state something consistent with their promise to this nation to have those contracts reviewed and looked at again, but not a single word. And they had on stage Maya Motley, someone we admire for whatever, who said that a government dealing with the oil giants must be prepared to have a difficult conversation. They have no conversation except to listen piously to the billions that these people are making. And I wonder whether my slave ancestors and indentured laborers, whether they're not turning in pain in their graves. With all that sacrifice they made, all that suffering, where the Creator gave us this fantastic wealth, is going to go the route of the old imperial masters, that we get 5 and they get 95. I have said before, those who invested in drilling for oil ought to be properly compensated. But the massive difference is what I think concerns every Guyanese. We've looked at those figures, and if we can sit down like big men and not mice and talk to these giants, they would know that every public servant, every policeman can have their salaries doubled this very month. That is where we are. It's a sad situation.
A sad situation, even as we prepare to usher in the 52nd anniversary of becoming a Republican or gaining Republican status. Let's go back to this release, this so-called message, Republic anniversary message by the PPP. They're claiming that the colors, the multitude of colors of the flag, I believe, splashed to the reflects our after hard work, and our rich diversity that defines us as multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multicultural nation. A true reflection of the one country, one people, one future, under which they campaign the one Guyana. We're not hearing anything about one people, one nation, one destiny any longer. What is happening, Mr. Green?
I had a cousin, her name was Yvonne. We used to call her Me One. That is what they tell us, Me One. So what again? We have to consult the lexicon. What do they understand by one? And that is the tragic situation we are in today. I said earlier, as you know, let's give Imam Ali a chance. Some of his friends have said he means well. But in a letter I sent out today, I reminded the public that the road to ruin is lined with good intentions. And that is the best take I can give at this point of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
People seem to think he's done a lot of damage to the country in terms of race relation. Corruption is massive, all manner of things. We'll get back into that. 52 years ago, young Hamilton Green, we can just imagine, you see that portrait of you at the back there. Young Hamilton Green, you were probably, I think you were General Secretary of the PNC when? Around that time or the latter?
No, I was General Secretary in the difficult days.
Oh, 60.
From 62 to 74. Those were trying days that, as one man said, I was not a secretary, I was a general. We had to face people who were bringing guns and rice containers. We had to face the horrors of the Abraham family, son Chapman, and all the negative things that produce marginal lines along the east coast of Demerara and produce division among families. And I had hoped by now, particularly work of Burnham, Kai Fester, where he recognized for the first time all the religious strains of our society, gave the Hindus, Muslims, and Christians equal status as far as their public holidays are concerned. But after all that effort, it has been tarnished by people who perhaps are just selfish or are being influenced by our erstwhile masters. And this, to my mind, is the greatest tragedy and the biggest challenge we face. Are we being influenced by those who enslaved us? And we must not, never, forget our history, because some people tell us that the leopard would never change its spots. And I hope that our young people will recognize the gravity of the situation and that they need to come out and stand up so that this nonsense will not continue. Because there's another aspect to it. In another 10 years, if you're not careful, the whole demographic condition of this country can change. And where will we? And I've urged my Indo and African brothers and the others, we've got to work together so that we preserve our patrimony and we recognize that has happened in 1838, 1823, is the old massa technique that has kept us apart. But our education is not geared for that. When Burnham introduced national service, it was to bring our people together from East Coast, Quarantine, Northwest, everywhere, to recognize that there is something, a real oneness about us. It was beginning to work. Why it was stopped, of course, is another tragedy.
You know, I'm beginning to wonder as to, because we all know the motto, one people, one nation, one destiny. Why is the PPP so afraid to even utter those words, to embrace it? One people, one nation, one destiny. Why?
Because deep down in the psyche of some of them, and I say some of them, they don't believe in the utility of one people, one nation, one destiny. And they feel that once they can control the money and the commercial sector, and you notice this commercial, whatever you call them, they're mere sycophants of the PPP. They're not genuine, every one of them. And even those who are willing to step outside are afraid. I've started a program which costs some money, the public platform on Channel 9. I've written to several of them. One man who said he would support asked me not to mention his name and his firm's name. What kind of freedom are we enjoying in this country? You have a police force that has really been compromised, most of it. The immigration department stands out like a beacon of hope and goodness. And I hope that thanks to the energies that you display on your program and others, we can turn things around, that change can bring us into the light of happiness and prosperity. Guyana is lucky we have no monsoons, no hurricanes, no floods, less than 1 million people. Why should we still hope in inverted commas, enjoy poverty. By now, every citizen ought to be comfortable. And I told a top PP man at a function some months ago, all they need to do is follow the footsteps of Forbes Burnham. Free education, free healthcare, infrastructure, and ramp up of cultural oneness. I told him, do it. If you don't want to mention Burnham's name, no problem. But follow that program, that path he has set so brilliantly and so courageously. And we'll be the envy of the world. I hear some people talk about Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. We can surpass Singapore. We have a smaller population and with more resources. Why should we have people who still beg on the streets? I was with my wife in Mandela Avenue the other day, and a young woman came to us and said that she's in a bad way. My wife turned around, went to Bounty, and bought some stuff for her. Why should that be so in a country with these massive resources? The pork knockers are unknown these days because they were shifted aside, and our gold is now being harvested by a majority of non-Guyanese. And we must stand up and protest. And those who say that we're protesting as you did must remember that the great United States that we admire protested. If they did not, they may still have been a colony under the likes of George III. So unless you protest, you want to bring people to their senses. And our young people must have, as we did in the 60s, protest, and do what is right, so that we can bequeath to our children and their children a land of glory and goodness.
Well said, Mr. Hamilton Green. Let's go 52 years back. 52 years back. I know it brings back a lot of memories to a lot of those of you who were around then, including Mr. Hamilton Green. On this day, as you guys prepare to become a republic, Guyana changed its status to a republican status, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. What was this day like as you guys prepared to usher in this new day on the 23rd day of February 1970?
Magnificent. We took into account our history. 23rd of February was the time that coffee struck for freedom. And again, because the machinations and disunity, it didn't last too long. And I recommend to you a book written by a Dutch author called Blood in the River, which sets out the struggle of 1763. But to answer your question directly, it was an exciting time. Remember that the three great Bs met at Dickinson Bay in 1965 before any of us were independent. Bird of Antigua, Barrow of Barbados, and Burnham of Guyana. They set the stage for 1970. And I, along with Sonny Rampel, are the only two persons alive who attended the Independence Conference in November of 1965 when he and Smith declared UDI, but that's another matter. And when we discussed the details of the new constitution, we insisted that a clause be inserted to allow us, within a reasonable time of 5 years, to change our status. So where the Queen is no longer our head of state, even though titular, but that we'll have an executive president. And that was the moment that we moved from independence. Guyana can boast another first. We were not the first to get independence in the region, but we were first to break the bonds of those who held us captive for so many centuries. And it was not only emotional and constitutional, but it was righteous that how could you have independence and you still have to swear allegiance to Her Gracious Majesty the Queen? And our position was that it was inconsistent with a greater and deeper meaning of freedom and constitutional reform that we insisted at that conference in Lancaster House that a clause be put in so we can shift the Tribunal Republic as we did in February of 1970. The first in the region, others followed. In fact, I think Barbados only became a republic a few years ago. So Guyana's very forward. We're proud to have a man like Burnham who led us with courage into a new world. And, you know, this thing didn't start in 70. It began earlier when in Yugoslavia, Tito hosted a meeting of what he called the non-aligned movement. That is, countries who are prepared to be aligned to neither the East nor the West. And Burnham was a solid supporter of the non-aligned movement, which began in September in Yugoslavia in 1961. Of course, the then government didn't show any enthusiasm to be part of the non-aligned movement because they were aligned to the Soviet Union. What the four leaders did, Tito of Yugoslavia, Pandit Nehru of India, Nasser of Egypt, and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, they said, look, we will be non-aligned, so no one group will control our resources. Our Republican status was a manifestation that philosophical underpinning to make our golden arrowhead not symbolic, but real. And that is what the Republican position was all about. People don't know, after and during independence, we started what we call the Institute of Decolonization, because to change the attitude and mindset of people is not easy. Remember that the slaves still carry the label of the erstwhile slave master. My name can't be found in Africa. My wife just had a guest from Rwanda, born in Mali. His name was Kobe, an African name. But I still carry the slave master's name. So that it is a task not yet finished to let our people know what the golden arrowhead really means and what being a republic is all about.
You know, Mr. Green, if we stick a pin for a moment, we have someone who witnessed and in fact sang a song, probably one of the first or the first Mashramani songs in Guyana. He happens to be my paternal uncle, Julius Benshop. Uncle Julius, how are you?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
You're fine.
Yeah, Mr. Green said he heard of you. What do you remember 52nd years ago as we celebrated, became a republic, and Mashramani celebration the first time, 52 years ago? What do you remember?
Well, I was invited to the office by the JCs of Mackenzie. They were claiming that the Mashramani passed the year before and nobody celebrated. So they come, the JCs, a group of people come together in Mackenzie and they decide to keep the celebration. And I composed the song right then, Mashramani.
All right, Uncle Julius, I'd want you to give us. But what was that? A piece of your song, Mashramani. But what was the time like 52 years ago as you guys were preparing to celebrate the first Mashramani ever in Guyana?
The words of the song was together, working happily, by self-help, cooperatively, our nation made rapid progress with this great success. Then over the expect Mashramani, we Republican free. Mashramani, big fed for you and me. Mashramani, it's really nice to see. Everybody is dancing, celebrating Mashramani.
Yes. Yep.
I can't match Uncle Julius.
Do you remember that song, Mr. Hamilton Green?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Mashramani was coined an instance of, I don't know his first name, but his name is Hamilton at Mackenzie at the time. Before we named the place after Burnham, and the whole area was called Linden. I don't remember his first name, but it's something Hamilton. He was part of the cultural environment at Linden at the time. And Julius' recollection is perfect, and his voice is still good. How old are you now, Julius?
Yeah.
How old are you now, Uncle Julius? Mr. Hamilton Green wants.
83.
83.
83.
Okay, I have 4 or 5 years on you.
For what?
He's 4 years ahead of you.
Oh.
Yeah. And Uncle Julius, how do you feel when, as we approach Mashramani now, 52 years? How are you guys feeling then as young people?
Well, I feel okay, but I think the country can do something more.
I got you.
To promote it.
To promote Mashramani.
My song, the first Mashramani song, is recorded by me and Harry Whittaker.
Ah, that's right.
All right.
Harry Whittaker and me.
Uncle Julius, before we go again, I know a lot of people are probably thinking that they never knew that I have talented people in my family. People with talent, right? I remember as a little boy, Uncle Julius, you holding me in your hands, and we walking around Linden
Yes.
and at Stabrook Market and so forth. Sing another piece of that tune for all of our listeners right now around Guyana, around the world.
Together, working happily, by self-help, cooperatively, our nation made rapid progress with this great success. Stand up for Guyana's best. Mashramani, we Republican free. Mashramani, we fight for you and me. Mashramani, it's really nice to see everybody rejoicing, celebrating Mashramani.
Thank you so much, Uncle Julius. Thank you.
Give a round of applause there. Give just a round of applause.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much for your contribution. I hope you can do a remix of that, Uncle Julius. I hope.
Yes, I want to record this song back again because with more depth.
Yeah. We can talk about it. I can be your manager.
All right.
Thank you, Uncle Julius. We love you.
You too.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Green, thank you very much, man.
Okay, Ma. Okay, Julius. God bless. I must keep in touch.
Neighbor and you are good friends.
Who?
My neighbor and you are good friends. You tell me
Neighbor.
live in your house.
What's your neighbor's name?
Cornelius Smith.
Ah,
You want his number?
old soldier.
Yeah, I can get his number later from you, Uncle Julius.
All right, I got it here.
Okay, but before you go, a lot of people like the song. Sing again for us. One more time, Uncle Julius. One more time.
From the days of our hero coffee, we kept on fighting manfully, and now we attain victory. It's I that one. We get we Mashramani, Mashramani, free
Republic and free. Mashramani.
Big man, what you want me?
Mashramani.
It's very nice to see everybody rejoicing and drinking Mashramani.
Thank you so much, Uncle Julius. We'll talk later. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. A lot of people just love the voice, Uncle Julius. Yeah, thank you. That's my Uncle Julius, my paternal uncle. He's 83 years old. Great job, Uncle Julius. So how should we be living, especially around this time, Mashramani, everybody, not just Linden, but all across Guyana? I remember as a little boy, we all look forward for this, to live and celebrate in unity. Do we still have that, Mr. Green?
We are losing it thanks to the present environment. But I think if we have a government that really understands the meaning, the history of Mashramani, we can rekindle that spirit of goodwill, that spirit of oneness, that spirit that detached us from our erstwhile masters. I hope, I pray that that is still possible. The problem with that challenge is that, as we have seen in history, some of our leaders go under, literally and metaphorically, under the burden of the beastly money that the old masters are expert at doling out to a few to keep the majority subjected. And I've always argued that if our leaders on both sides of the divide understood a little more of our history, they'll stop making these mistakes. Barbara Tushman, in her book, A March of Folly, reminds us that the phenomenon noticeable in all history, East, West, North, and South, is how leaders fail to learn lessons from their experiences and other experiences and keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that is where we are today. If Burnham were alive, we will sit gloriously to enjoy that bounty of oil and gas.
You know, in closing, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, founder leader of the People's National Congress, also one of the founders of the People's Progressive Party. A lot of people, especially young people, and even those who don't remember, or probably some probably never knew, that Burnham helped to form the People's Progressive Party. He was the first chairman of the People's Progressive Party before they. And for 1 year, Burnham had his own faction of the PPP, and Chetty Jagan had his own faction until the name changed to People's National Congress. Right? 57. Good. Now,
in fact, we went to elections in 57 August as the PPP Burnhamites, PPP Jaganites.
Yeah.
And we met after I was a young Turk and decided there's no point carrying on this charade. And we took the name off of the African National Congress and the Indian National Congress. That's how we got the colors of the flag and the name People's National Congress. Where they got this reform nonsense from, I don't know, but that's another matter.
Well, the reform came about. We'll talk about that some other time. It came. It will take us another 2 hours to discuss it. But Mr. Green, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, President Burnham, celebrated his 99th birth anniversary on the 20th of this month. How do you, in closing, reflect on this man and his big contributions, unmatched contributions to this nation? Linden Suzdike Highway, the Quarantine Highway, you name it, every single thing. Institutions are still standing tall as a result of this man, a man that a lot of people, or some of them, don't like for no apparent reason. Some of them weren't even born when he died, but they still said they punished under Burnham. I met a couple of young people who said they punished under Burnham, but they were born in 1991, 1992. Describe this man, this giant of a leader. He has made some mistakes. He wasn't perfect, but he was a giant of a leader. Talk about him before we go in your closing remarks, sir.
I describe Burnham as the greatest visionary we've ever had in this country. A man who had the ability to navigate between the superpowers. And that was not easy in the 60s and the 70s, you know. Remember, I've postulated that only two men survived the horrors of the Cold War. Men I admire: Fidel Ruz Castro and Forbes Burnham. The others went under. In fact, let me tell you the story. As General Secretary, we were preparing to give Kwame Nkrumah a special welcome to our independence celebrations in May 1966. But because he was victim of the old colonial tactics of divide and rule, on his way to make peace in Vietnam using China, the boys organized a coup early in the year, so he was not able to attend our independence celebrations. But Burnham was a genius. I think you can't say anything more than that. He set the stage for authentic national unity, for respect of the major religions. But beyond that, Burnham brought great respect to Guyana, as he had the best, and I challenge anyone, the best foreign service ever in this country after independence. Men of the likes of Rashid Jackson, Bishop Talbot, and a whole host of people. And beyond that, because his advocacy in the non-aligned movement and at the United Nations, the way he spoke, sometimes without a single note, people began to respect Guyana. I recall attending a United Nations meeting where normally when people get to speak, there are very few seats that are filled. When Burnham time was due to speak, all the seats were filled, particularly of the third world countries and the first world. They came to hear this magical sentences from Lyndon Burnham. That was the majesty of the man. And our young people must hope that somewhere in the ashes will emerge a man with the stature, the perspicacity, the vision of Forbes Burnham to save this country. I can talk about Burnham for the next 2 hours, but I think time will not permit that.
Lots and lots of things. But quickly before we go, I know Lata Mangeshkar visited Guyana during the time when the PNC was actually in office. Lata Mangeshkar, she passed away the other day. A great, great singer and a beautiful voice. But also, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi visited Guyana. Lots of other leaders, world leaders, visited Guyana. What were those visits like? And do you remember Lata Mangeshkar visiting?
Of course, when the reporter called me, I didn't quite remember. But my secretary and my chauffeur, going through photographs with Oscar, found the photograph with two of us sitting together in an office. So I remembered her when I saw the photograph. I remember Indira Gandhi, the other good lady, all the people who came here from Bangladesh, Nareri, Kaunda, Fidel, the Prime Minister of Canada, I think his son is now Prime Minister. And Burnham brought glory to this country by bringing those people to Guyana.
All right, Hamilton Green, former Prime Minister, former Mayor, former General Secretary of the People's National Congress. Let me give you an opportunity, Mr. Green, for your closing remarks now as to what you'd like to see Guyana maybe in the next 52 years from now.
I would hope that good sense will prevail and that all that has happened at this oil and gas conference, all that people like Glenn Lal are doing every day on the radio, all that you see in editorials of the independent press, that's Starbuck News and Kaito News, that it will dawn upon the present administration that they can do much better and that the people of this country deserve a better deal, and that together, and I emphasize the word together, we can turn things around. They ought to recognize that in society that is polarized along ethnic lines in particular, we can't afford to this march of stupidity that we seem to be on that kind of journey. And I hope and I pray that good sense will prevail and that they save this country so that my children and my children's children will inherit a land of plenty. Less than 1 million people, why should we not all, and I repeat, all be comfortable? First-class health service, first-class education, first-class cultural activity. Burnham is the man who brought Clive Law back into prominence. I don't know if you are young enough to know, but what Burnham did, they used to call it Burnham magic. And Clive Lloyd, along with Viv Richards, perhaps the two most successful West Indian captains. Today, the West Indian team is, well, a sorry bunch of young fellows. But Clive Lloyd's ascendancy was a consequence of Burnham's vision. When the board couldn't get Clive Lloyd here, Burnham called our High Commissioner in London, who called the Australian Prime Minister and got Clive released, brought him to Trinidad. There was a long delay in Trinidad because Trinidad was on top of the time. We flew Clive on Burnham's instruction. Larry London was a pilot of that helicopter. We told him to put on his gears. Burnham kept the referees talking. In those days, the referees couldn't go out when Burnham talked to them. And he had a century stand with, I think, Alvin Kalchuran, which put him into prominence and made him one of the best captains we've ever had. And that story, when told, we call it Burnham magic. And that is only one instance of the importance he put to sport and culture. Carifesta 72 was his brainchild, where we brought all the strains of the Caribbean together so that we can expose our people to our culture and not an alien foreign culture. And some idiot, they wrote that Burnham used the Indian Immigration Fund to build a cultural center. Absolute nonsense. It was used as seed money, as a token, because we talked to several of the then Indian leaders, and they agreed that Indians weren't going back to India anyhow, and to use that money as a token to build the cultural center. Today, we don't have the glory of those days, but we can bring it back.
We can bring it back. Keep your fingers crossed. Hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money spent, taken out of NIS and other places to be given to private investors, friends of Jack Deere, to build a rubbish of a bridge. So these folks have no moral authority to talk about who take money and do what with money.
But you notice the Bobby's bridge.
Tell us.
When we look at the early designs, based on the soil conditions and the narrowing of the Bobby's River, it was proposed by the engineers to build the bridge from Stanleytown on the east to Ithaca on the west. It is a shorter distance, the soil is better. But because Stanleytown population and Ithaca did not consist of what they assumed to be their supporters, the bridge was built where it was, caused about 3 times the cost, and having to open often because of the expense. And in addition, they used up NIS money. In fact, today I spoke to the senior person in NIS, for a lady who called me on my program of the public platform, where she only gets $1,000 a month for an injury she sustained since 1987. And the official said it is because the way the NIS was mismanaged by the other party when they were in office. It's sad because NIS was Burnham's brainchild again. The genius Burnham thought of NIS, which we spread to Africa and other Caribbean countries. So that if you list the things that Burnham initiated, it's a long list, will take 2-4 pages. But since you mentioned the bridge, I thought I should share that knowledge with you.
Before you go, Mr. Green, something just a little voice in my head say to ask you to explain the sugar industry during the years, of course, when the canes were being mysteriously burnt, right? But what was the relationship like Gaisuko sugar workers and the PNC back in those days under Burnham and when you were prime minister? Explain that period, please.
Well, we sought to harmonize the sugar industry and to make it profitable. It was not easy. And to give recognition to the sugar workers, Indo-Afro-Guyanese. In fact, people don't know the Enmore Monument, where there's an annual pilgrimage, was Burnham's idea. I worked on that monument to make sure it was completed in time.
Well,
people go there and behave as though it was their idea.
Mr. Green, sorry that I'm interjecting. My apologies, sir. You're saying the Enmore martyrs, and the Enmore martyrs came, as a result of a protest.
Yes.
But you're saying that the idea of the Enmore martyrs and the monument came about as a result of, let's see here, as a result of this man, Lyndon.
It's Burnham's idea, my friend.
Continue.
I,
Continue.
I,
Continue.
my hands and labor contributed to the completion of the Enmore Monument. And no one can deny that's a fact. As a little boy at Queen's College, I remember when they would have the marches at Queen's College in Brickdam then. I would look through the window and remember seeing Dr. Jagan, Lachman Singh, Jane Phillips Gaben. They stopped with the 5 coffins and the horses before they proceeded to the Representative Cemetery. That was in 1948. I think I was a 5th form at Queen's College at the time. I distinctly remember those figures. And perhaps at the instance of my mother, was one of the things that put me into serious politics. Enmore Monument was Burnham's idea. Don't let anybody fool you. Carifesta Avenue was Burnham's idea. Home Stretch was Burnham's idea. I named Home Stretch because I remember as a youngster at school seeing the horses come around the bend there in what was then known as the Home Stretch. And all the significant things we have in this country came as the initiative of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, a genius of his time.
All right, Hamilton Green is with us. We are going to say goodbye for now. I want to invite you sometime very soon. Don't be a stranger. It's always a pleasure to have you on this show, Mr. Green. It's like we go decades back. You're making me feel like a...
Don't talk about mother-in-law's cook-up.
Oh yeah, give her my regards. I gotta get that cook-up, man. Give her my regards.
Well, my wife is now making what I call a Jenny Banana Delight with overripe bananas. Fantastic. I had some tonight. But she wouldn't share the secret with anybody.
Oh, okay.
She's in New Jersey at the moment.
I will tell you this without hurting her feelings. I prefer her mother's cook-up.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
I prefer the Banana Delights.
Okay. Yeah. I guess there's no other choice, right?
Touche.
I want you to return, though. We have a lot more that I want to talk to you about, including the current day PNCR and so forth and so on. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
I'll invite you maybe sometime next week or so that we can continue this discussion on the political history. But thank you so much. You're looking sharp. God bless.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Welcome. Yeah. Mr. Hamilton Green here. One of the things Mr. Green said moments ago, I don't know whether I missed that or not, that it was Burnham's idea for the erection of a monument, of course, to remember the Enmore martyrs. I hope some folks are watching and they would know that this man that they love to hate for no reason, and they drive on the Linden Suez-like Highway, built under this man's leadership. The Quarantine Highway, built under this man's leadership. When they walk into the banks, built under this man's leadership. Agri-Bank, this bank, the bank, and even on the East Bank, West Bank, even the Demerara Harbor Bridge, you name it. All these things built under this man's leadership. I mean, look, I knew Chetty, I like Chetty, yes. But we can't say the same that those things were built under Chetty. We got to be realistic. They were built under Burnham. NIS, Burnham, all these, even the Palms, right? Under Burnham. The roads, Enmore Martyr. All these things under Forbes Burnham. Oh, poor Burnham. Burnham did all this thing for them. And them hate Burnham, man. Just like that. I know some people who weren't even born yet. They weren't even born yet when Burnham died. And they said they were starving under Burnham. They starved under Burnham. Burnham not give them flour, Burnham ban peas. I said, but what year you born? He said 1991. Man, these guys are crazy. But thank you all so much, though. Thank you all so much for a wonderful night. I see my good friend Hammy is still there with us. You were saying something off screen? Sorry?
No, I'm saying encourage the young people to go to the gardens east of the Bank of Guyana and west of St. George's Cathedral to see the monument Burnham built for the leaders of the non-aligned movement. I mentioned the names earlier: Tito of Yugoslavia, Nehru of India, Nkrumah of Ghana, and the man from, what's his name? From Egypt, Nasser.
Nasser.
And they should go there, as we did at one time, to honor those 4 leaders of the non-aligned movement, intended to take us out of the grip of the superpowers and be back in that business again, unfortunately.
All right. Thanks. I know we have a lot. You got to write that book, Mr. Green. You got to write that book. What's going on, man? What's going on, my friend?
I started.
You started. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. We love you and we appreciate you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hamilton Green there. Sometimes I disagree with him. A lot of times we agree. But one of the things I tell you about Hamilton Green, though, the more you disagree with him, the more he gets along with you. Happy Mashramani, everyone. Happy Mashramani. Coming up at midnight right here on 107.1 FM, we'll carry the Republic message, anniversary message, that is, from the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, the Honorable Aubrey Compton Norton. Midnight, we will carry that right here on 107.1 FM. But to be fair also, I would like to read the last paragraph of the PPP's Republic anniversary message. And it's signed by the PPP's president, Irfan Ali, the PPP's president, Irfan Ali. It says here, 52 years ago, the attainment of Republican status heralded self-rule. As we reflect, let's renew our commitment to collectively work towards building a Guyana we all desire, and to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood. I ain't able to read this message. It's brotherhood, but we all know that Irfan would have probably pronounced it as brotherhood. Happy Mashramani, you guys. Be safe on the roads, wherever you go, whatever you do. Let's take a toast, man. I'm not going to tell you guys what's in here, but let's take a toast. Let's take a toast. And as Uncle Julius sang, what is it? He said, Mashramani, Republican free. Mashramani was me. I remember as a little kid, we loved that song, man. You love that song, Mashramani. Thank you, Uncle Julius. Thank you all, beautiful people. Thank you all. I'll be back tomorrow, I think. Let me see. You guys want to see me tomorrow evening? Gary Greenwich, what's going on, my friend? You guys want a program tomorrow? Let me see. If you want a program, we'll have a program. But what I do know is that tomorrow morning we'll have Gabby. Gabby's going to have a lot of Guyanese superstars in studio. Gabby and Andre, Selector Andre, Josh, and Earl. The full crew we have there. I haven't gotten a message yet from one of them to say that it's way past their bedtime. But good evening, guys. Continue the good job. Tune in tomorrow morning right here on 107.1 FM, 9 o'clock Guyana time, 9 o'clock to 11 But also, don't forget that before this show starts here, in the morning, the mid-morning show, you could get a bit of Cams TV with targeting the Bostonian time with Kadaki. Go over there and check out what Kadaki has to say as well tomorrow morning. It's Mashramani or Independence. So I'm sorry, Mashramani. Sorry, I'm acting like the Ministry of Finance. They say 52 years from 1966 to now, 52 years. So you guys want me on tomorrow? I will be on tomorrow. God bless you all. You guys know what song I'm going to play, right? Let me see. What song you guys think that I am going to play right now? I wish I had the Rudy Grant Calypso March in Guyana, right? But all those things are copyrights, man. Copyrights. So I'll stick to my song. Let's go. God bless you all. Have a great night. And thank you so much, Hamilton Green. The Honorable Hamilton Green, former mayor of Georgetown, former prime minister, and former general secretary of the People's National Congress. See you guys tomorrow. Same place, same time.
smoke in my brain. I wanna do my thing. Work up a sweat until I soak in wet. Rub your body, show no mercy, because I'm feeling tipsy, I'm feeling freaky. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. Let me rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub and love. I wanna rub and kiss up. I wanna rub and jam up. I wanna rub and rub up. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. Let me rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on